Okay. So we're talking about Rosh Hashanah and Chodesh Elul. We're going to start off by talking about the fact that on Rosh Hashanah, we don't mention Rosh Chodesh in the davening. Rosh Hashanah is the beginning of the new year, obviously. You could call it the Jewish New Year. It's on the first day of the month of Tishrei, which is the first month in the calendar as far as years go. We all know that nothing in Torah, nothing in Judaism is that simple. There's a first month in terms of counting months, which is Nisan, and there's a first month in terms of counting years, which is Tishrei. Rosh Hashanah is the first day of the month of Tishrei. Now, on the first day of every month of the year, we have Rosh Chodesh, which is the beginning of the new month, and every Rosh Chodesh, we mention Rosh Chodesh, we mention the fact that it's the beginning of a new month in davening, in the prayers of the day. The question is, why on Rosh Hashanah do we not mention it all? We're in shul for plenty enough time. It's not like, oh, there's not enough time to squeeze in Rosh Chodesh, right? The whole Musaf of Rosh Chodesh is a few minutes. To add in mention of it would take even less. Why do we not mention Rosh Chodesh in the davening on Rosh Hashanah? And a reason that's given is, in order to confuse the Satan is the prosecuting angel, to confuse the Satan so that he should not be aware that today is Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah is a day of judgments. It's a day when everything that's going to happen to us during the coming year gets decided. And it's perhaps one of the biggest days of the year in terms of the career of the Satan. He gets to get up there. It's the biggest day of our years in terms of deciding what's coming in the year to come, and he wants to get up there and get a piece of the action. Now, obviously, for him to get highly active is not in our best interests. So we avoid mentioning Rosh Chodesh to confuse him. Does that seem like it doesn't really make much sense? Go on.
Maybe this is a stupid question, but why would just excluding mentioning Rosh Chodesh negate the whole Rosh Hashanah?
It's not a stupid question at all. It's a very good question, and that's exactly where we're going.
Why would
first of all, we're mentioning Rosh Hashanah. Isn't that enough information? So the fact that we're not mentioning Rosh Chodesh, all of a sudden we spend 6 hours in shul, at least throughout the course of Rosh Hashanah night, Rosh Hashanah day, Shachris, Musaf, Mincha, Mariv, the whole day, we're blowing shofar, we're eating apple dipped in honey. There's more than enough hints for the Satan to be well aware that it's Rosh Hashanah. So what does that mean, to confuse the Satan? It doesn't really make much sense. And there are a number of other things that are also attributed, a number of other things that we do that seem a little irregular. And the reason that's given is that we do them in order to confuse the Satan. Another one is that we don't bless Rosh Hashanah the Shabbos before. That Rosh Hashanah is Rosh Chodesh again, and we know that every month, the Shabbos before Rosh Chodesh, before the new moon, before the beginning of the new month, we bless the new moon, we bless the new month on the Shabbos before. It's Shabbos Mevarchim, it's called. Mevarchim means bless. We are blessing the coming month, the moon. And we don't bless the moon. Shabbos Mevarchim of Tishrei, we don't actually bless the moon and the coming month. And there are a number of reasons for this. One of them, again, is the fact that we want to confuse the Satan. We don't want to give him a heads up, hey, by the way, Rosh Chodesh is coming up, Rosh Hashanah is coming up, because we don't want him to be in the loop. Again, doesn't really seem to make much sense. Now, there is an explanation that's given to explain why it's effective to not bless the new moon before, and that is because there's something very fascinating about the calendar. The calendar, in the times of the Beis Hamikdash, in the times of the temple, when the calendar was not permanently fixed in advance, the way that it was set was because the Jewish calendar is, for the most part, a lunar calendar. The months go by the cycles of the moon. The new month begins with the new moon. How do you know when it's a new moon? People would come and testify in court, in Beis Din, in Yerushalayim, and say that we saw the new moon, it's a new month. Now, obviously, you can't just rely completely on that, because if people don't see the new moon, if it's cloudy every month, you're going to have a month that's 6 months long. A month that's 100 or 200 or 300 days long you could have if no one ever sees it. So there are calculations involved, and we basically know that the lunar cycle is 29 and a half days long. So it's always, every month is basically, the average comes out to the new moon is always going to be sighted either on the 29th the last day of the month is either 29 or 30 days, the new moon will always be sighted either on the 30th day or the 31st day, which will then be the first day of the coming month. So once you hit the 31st day, that's automatically day 1 of the next month. If someone had come and say, hey, we saw the new moon on day 30, not on day 31, day 30 becomes the first day of the month, and then the month that we're leaving, the month we're leaving behind, was then a 29-day month, not a 30-day month. Now, because the length of the months and the dates of the calendar are set by Beis Din, this is an extremely powerful thing. That we, the Jewish people, literally have the power to control, not by our own decisions, but by following the rules, by following the system. We actually determine when the days of the year are. When Rosh Hashanah will be, when Yom Kippur will be, is determined by us, not by Hashem. And there's a midrash that says that when the angels, they want to know when the Yom Tovim are coming up, and they come to Hashem, when's Yom Tov going to be? Hashem says, don't ask me, go ask the Jews. They're the ones who set the calendar. And this is actually reflected in davening. In the davening, in the prayers of Shabbos, we say, blessed are you, Hashem, Mekadesh HaShabbos, who sanctifies Shabbos. When it comes to the holidays, the Yom Tov, because Shabbos is every 7th day. Because the Yom Tovim depend on the calendar, and the calendar is determined by us. When it comes to Yom Tov in davening, we say Mekadesh Yisrael v'Hazmanim. Hashem sanctifies the Jews and the times. Because which days are going to be sanctified as Yom Tov depends on us. The sanctification of the dates of Yom Tovim, of festivals, of holidays, is an outcome of the fact that we are sanctified and given the authority to determine when it will be. So when we don't bless the moon in advance, the Satan actually could literally be unaware of when Rosh Hashanah is going to be, because that depends on us. There are a number of reasons why this still doesn't answer the question satisfactorily. Part of which is the fact that this was in the times of the Beis Hamikdash, but today we have a fixed calendar. We can look up what day Rosh Hashanah is going to be this year, next year, the coming year, the coming year. Satan can open up Google Calendars and have a look when it's going to be. Right? He doesn't need us to tell him. That's more of what's mentioned. Those are more of the things that are mentioned here. We blow shofar now. We blow shofar every day after Shachris throughout the month of Elul. There are a number of reasons. One of those reasons is to confuse the Satan. On Erev Rosh Hashanah, the last day of this month, the day on which we will be bringing in Rosh Hashanah that evening, we don't blow shofar. Why? To confuse the Satan. He can still open up his phone and have a look at the date.
Or he hasn't figured that out from 2 years ago. Or
That's going to come up too. Right, so there are so many questions. There's so much about this that doesn't make sense. Number one is, we have a fixed calendar. He can flip open the calendar and have a look. Number two is, we do the same things every year, and we're following the directions, and he could look in Shulchan Aruch and see that we don't blow shofar on Erev Rosh Hashanah. So, what does this all mean? So, let's take a look at another one of the things that is done in order to confuse the Satan. There's a Gemara that says, why a question's asked, I believe it was Rabbi Yitzchak, if I recall correctly. I think it actually says in the text. Why is it, thank you, that we blow shofar on Rosh Hashanah? So the Gemara says, what do you mean, why do we blow shofar on Rosh Hashanah? It's a mitzvah, the Torah says to blow shofar on Rosh Hashanah. So then he goes back and re-qualifies his question. I didn't mean to ask, why do we blow shofar, but we blow once after Musaf. Then we blow again in Shemona Esrei, and we blow again in Musaf. We're blowing shofar so many times. There's no obligation to hear 100 sounds of the shofar. Why are we blowing shofar so many times? Gemara answers, to confuse the Satan. Confuse the Satan what? What, we blow shofar for one batch, which is an obligation. He's going to say, oh, it's Rosh Hashanah. Then we blow it again. He's going to go, oh, they're blowing too many times. It must not be Rosh Hashanah. My calendar's off. What does that mean? So Rashi explains what that means. On that Gemara, Rashi in his commentary says, we confuse the Satan. It doesn't mean to confuse him about what the date is. It's just to disorient him, to throw him off. Why? The Satan takes a look. He says, yes, this is my big day. This is my day. I'm going to come. I'm going to prosecute. I'm going to come and give all the Jews a hard time when Hashem, when the Creator is determining what the year is going to be. I'm going to make it tough for everybody. And then he hears us blow the shofar. And he hears us blow the shofar again, and blow the shofar again, and blow the shofar again. And he says to himself, oh my God, these people take this mitzvah really seriously. Not only do they blow the shofar and fulfill the obligation of blowing the shofar, they go over and above and they blow it again and blow it again, and we blow it multiple times to satisfy every different possible opinion of how the shofar exactly is supposed to be blown. Some people may not be aware of this, but when the shofar is blown right after Kriyas Torah, after we read the Torah before Musaf, there are nuances of difference in the way that the shofar is blown to the way it's blown during Musaf. Because there are different opinions in halacha about exactly how it's supposed to be blown. So we blow a full series before Musaf and then a full series during Musaf, so that each obligation, each opinion of how this obligation should be satisfied is being fulfilled. We're going beyond the letter of the law. We're making sure to fulfill every possible opinion, fulfill this mitzvah as maximally as possible. We do it extra times. The shofar also, as is mentioned in a number of places, is not only a mitzvah, it also inspires us to do teshuvah. So we're trying to ramp up the inspiration. So Satan says, well, these guys are doing this really seriously. I'm in trouble. I don't have a very good case. However well I prepared and whatever sort of file I'm coming into the Beis Din and to present to God about why the Jews should have a bad year, they're taking this teshuvah thing really seriously. I'm in trouble. And he gets thrown off and gets disoriented. So when we say confuse the Satan, it doesn't necessarily mean to confuse him about what day it is. And if we look in some of the places where it talks about this, even though at first glance we could understand that it's saying the Satan's being confused about what the date is, it says he's confused about when to come and prosecute for judgment. It doesn't say when Rosh Hashanah will be. It says when to come and prosecute for judgment. He's all prepared, he's all ready to go, and as he's walking into the courtroom, we come and do all these things that throw him off and disorient him. Now he's confused. What am I supposed to do? Should I go full force now? Should I wait and try another time? We've thrown him off completely. And that's the idea. That's what the Gemara says, and Rashi explains. The Gemara says, we blow the shofar, we blow it again, and we blow it again, and we go far beyond the requirement of halacha in order to disorient the Satan by showing him that we're going above and beyond what we have to do. And now this is going to put some of the other things into context to make a little more sense. Why do we blow shofar during the month of Elul? Not to disorient the Satan about the date on the calendar. To disorient the Satan, because why do we blow shofar during the month of Elul? It's explained in halacha. Halacha explains in order to inspire us to do teshuvah, to remind us, hey, shofar's blowing, Rosh Hashanah is coming up. Get serious. It's time to get serious, start doing teshuvah. And Satan's sitting there saying, these people are doing teshuvah for a whole month. I'm finished. My case is over. I've been preparing for 11 months since last Rosh Hashanah. 11 and a half months, whatever it is at any point in Chodesh Elul, the beginning of Elul, it's 11 months since Rosh Hashanah. I've been preparing and building up this case and keeping records of everything everyone's doing, and now they're doing teshuvah. I'm finished. So we are disorienting the Satan, not about the date, but about his likelihood of being successful in his case, in his prosecution. And the power of teshuvah is such, the Gemara says, that if a person does something, and the example in the Gemara says, a person says, I am betrothing this lady, they agree to become engaged, and he says, I am betrothing this lady on condition that I am a tzaddik gomer, I am a complete tzaddik. His betrothal to this lady is dependent on his status as a tzaddik. Now, if this is a guy who's been doing everything in the book wrong for every day since he was born, we should be able to safely presume that there's no marriage here. There's no betrothal. There's nothing, because it's dependent on his status as a righteous person. But the Gemara says it's not that simple, because what if he had a moment of sincere regret, a moment of sincere teshuvah? That moment, just an instant of sincere teshuvah, is enough to overturn a lifetime of doing nothing right and everything wrong. And now we have a halachic problem. Is this person engaged or not? It's a question. It's not so simple. Because all this person needs to have done is had an instant of sincere teshuvah inside, and that's not for anyone to judge other than Hashem. And he could be a tzaddik gomer, a 100% entirely righteous person instantaneously. Now, considering that, the Satan comes and says, these people are doing teshuvah all month long. I'm finished. I have no case. It's all over. Now, some of the other things. So now we're looking at, and then on Erev Rosh Hashanah, what happens? It comes to Erev Rosh Hashanah. We don't blow shofar. Again, to throw off the Satan. The Satan knows it's Erev Rosh Hashanah. But again, we're not trying to disorient him as far as the date. We're disorienting him as to his confidence in his likelihood to succeed. He's like, these people have been blowing shofar and doing Teshuvah all month long. Erev Rosh Hashanah comes. They're not even bothering. I must be really finished. These people must be so confident in their Teshuvah up to this point. They're not even bothering to blow shofar today. Forget it. I might as well not even show up. So we blow shofar the whole month of Elul to disorient the Satan and to show him we are doing Teshuvah. We're focusing, if we do Teshuvah, you have zero case. Erev Rosh Hashanah comes, we don't blow the shofar. Now again, that doesn't mean we shouldn't do Teshuvah, but we take away this symbolism of Teshuvah so that the Satan doesn't see that reference to Teshuvah and again gets disoriented. Why don't we mention Rosh Chodesh on Rosh Hashanah? Again, it's tied in a similar thing, but it's from a bit of a different angle. Now it comes to Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Chodesh is an opportunity. Rosh Chodesh is an additional mitzvah. There are additional kavanos we bring on Rosh Chodesh. There are additional positive things that happen on Rosh Chodesh. Those are things that are going to strengthen our case. We neglect to mention those things. And this is also, again, throwing off the Satan is also a reason that's given for the fact that we can conclude reading the Torah on Simchas Torah and not right now Rosh Hashanah. We should have concluded reading the Torah the Shabbos before Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah, we should start reading the Torah again. It's the beginning of a new year. Makes sense. Why don't we? To throw off the Satan. How are we throwing off the Satan? The Satan now comes to Rosh Hashanah, is completely confused. They've been doing Teshuvah all month. I basically have no chance. Now he comes to Rosh Hashanah. He wants to prosecute and he sees, hang on a second. What's going on? These people are not doing the mitzvahs they're supposed to do. They're not. The more we, on Rosh Hashanah, when we do things to strengthen our case, that could at the same time strengthen his motivation. Okay, they're doing new things today. They've done Teshuvah until now. Now they're getting involved in Rosh Chodesh. Now they're starting the Torah anew. These are things that give them extra credit. These are going to motivate me to start prosecuting these new things on Rosh Hashanah. We don't do those things. We don't start the Torah again from fresh, which would be a big deal. We don't mention Rosh Chodesh. We are neglecting to give the Satan further motivation by giving him more things to fight against. Now this seems to make a little less sense. Because yes, finishing the Torah and starting the Torah afresh on Rosh Hashanah would motivate the Satan to say, hey, they're finishing the Torah, they're starting Torah again, this is a big deal, I've got to come up with something. But at the same time, it's a big deal and we're losing out on that. We are losing out on the strength of completing Torah and going into Rosh Hashanah with the power of the completion of Torah right before. We are losing out on the strength of the additional prayers and the mention of Rosh Chodesh in the davening, and we lose out on that. So it's almost like cutting off your nose to spite your face. Yeah, we're not going to do things that are going to motivate the Satan, but at the same time, we're losing out on that. And the answer here is something that's incredibly powerful. The reason we're not doing this is because this is the custom. This is what Torah tells us to do. Torah instructs us not to mention Rosh Chodesh on this day. Torah instructs us not to complete the Torah before Rosh Hashanah. Now, from a subjective and personal standpoint, we all have different parts of Torah mitzvahs that excite us more, things that get us more motivated, things that we're more naturally into. But that doesn't mean that anything is more important than the other. What's the power of Torah mitzvahs? The power of Torah mitzvahs comes from the fact that the power of Torah mitzvahs, I thought you were about to kick me out, that's why I was looking.
Yeah, soon, picture.
Okay. The power of Torah mitzvahs comes from the fact that these are Hashem's directives to us. These are Hashem's guidelines. Mitzvahs aren't powerful. When we do a mitzvah, mitzvah in Hebrew means directive, instruction, commandment. In Aramaic, it means connection. Every time we follow the guidelines of the Torah, we are creating connections between this world and spirituality, between us and God. Mitzvah is Aramaic for connection. The reason mitzvahs connect us to God is not because there's something magical about them. It's because these are God's directives to us. The Creator said, I want you to do this. When we do what the Creator said He wants us to do, that connects us. Makes sense. It's natural, right? If I want to connect to someone, I have a relationship with someone and I want to strengthen the connection up between me and that person, it's a logical step. It's good advice for me to do things that I know that person wants me to do. It'll deepen the bond. So the reason mitzvahs are powerful and effective is not because of the nature of the mitzvah technically itself, although the power of mitzvahs is reflected in the nature of mitzvahs, but it works the other way around. The power of mitzvahs originates in the fact that these are the directives of the Torah to us. There's an amazing story, I'm going to say it super quickly, of Rav Elimelech of Lezhensk and Reb Zusha Ma'anipoli. These were brothers. They have different last names because the last names are of the cities where they lived. These were incredible chassidim, going back centuries now. They were in prison together. They were in prison for being observant Jews, following Torah mitzvahs. They're in prison, and there are strict rules about conditions under which one's allowed to daven, allowed to pray. And the conditions in their prison cell, they had a potty in the cell that prevented them from being allowed to daven because the conditions were not pleasant, to say the least. So one of them starts getting really upset. He's upset, he's crying, why I can't daven, I'm not allowed to daven. I miss davening. His brother says to him, what are you upset about? You want to daven, why do you want to daven? Because when you daven, when you pray, you are following God's directive and connecting to God by following His directive. God has directed us to not daven now because of the circumstances. When we don't daven today, we are connecting to God the same way as we would have had we davened if it was the right thing to do. So all of a sudden his tone changed. They started dancing together. The guard comes in and says, what are you guys so happy about? Why are you dancing? Rrr. So they point to the potty and they said, we're dancing. There's a potty in the room. So he says, you guys are nuts. I don't want you to be happy. Takes the potty out of the room, and then they got to daven. Right? But the moral of this story is that the power of Torah and mitzvahs, the connection that we form and the energy that we are able to absorb and bring into our lives and our surroundings through mitzvahs is not because of the nature of the mitzvah in and of itself in an absolute sense. It's because of the fact that we have been directed to do them. When we do mitzvahs, we're following the Torah's guidelines. And now, when we neglect to mention Rosh Chodesh on Rosh Hashanah, when we neglect to finish the Torah in advance and to bring the power of that into Rosh Hashanah, we are doing that because Torah said so. Because this is the minhag. This is what Torah's guidelines tell us to do. So when we do these things, on one hand, we're losing out the merit of those things. On the other hand, we're getting an equal and equivalent but different merit of not doing them because the Torah told us not to. So going forward, that's okay. Thank you. Nice to see you again. Yes, that's right. I always run over when we have a double period. Today we have one. What did you expect? So going forward, going into Rosh Hashanah, keeping in mind that number one, the power of Teshuvah is that in an instant, we can literally, and it's not fluff, this is something that has halachic ramifications. Halacha recognizes in a very real way, and this could affect, to the extent that it actually could affect the marital status of two individuals. This could decide whether or not they need a get if they decide not to go ahead with the marriage. This is a big deal. Why? Because of an instant. In one instant, if this person had even an instant of sincere and true teshuvah, he could have literally, to the extent not just emotional and not just blah, 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 halachically, according to Jewish law, completely have turned his life around. And also another thing that we can take away from this is that at the end of the day, some things are more inspiring than others, some things are more motivating than others, but at the end of the day, every single thing that we do that is following the directives and the guidelines of Torah is a way to connect. Even if it doesn't seem to make sense, it seems counterintuitive, the fact is the connection is not formed through the logical equation. The connection is formed through the fact that we are following the directives of the Creator. When we do that, we increase our bond with the Creator. We increase the extent to which we are connected to the Creator. And we increase the extent to which we are now in a position to receive blessing from the Creator. Every time we follow Torah's guidelines, regardless of what they are, as mundane as they may seem, when we follow Torah's guidelines, we are connecting to the Creator. We are increasing our connection and our ability to receive blessing. And I want to take this opportunity to wish everyone a Ksivach Sema Tova and a happy and good and sweet new year. Not everything that's good is sweet. Not everything that's sweet is good. The coming year should be both good and sweet. And looking forward to another year ahead of hopefully good classes. Thank you.